Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Today you can join us to make a crock pot full of roasted garlic marinara type of sauce with hidden carrots and some fun ideas on getting your kids to welcome some of the from scratch meals. I know that has been a change for us that we've been making over the past few years, and it's not always, the most welcomed change. And that's okay. So I'm going to show you some of the ways that I have gotten my family into eating some of the freshly milled flour and my from scratch cooking. Now, my kids still, and even myself, if I'm being really honest, if I'm going to have a lunch meat sandwich, I still prefer the store-bought white bread. We do shop at Aldi's, so I feel like that's a little bit better than the other stores, but anyways, I am finding creative ways to get my kids to eat the freshly milled flour. Now, we are at about a 70-30 ratio for the freshly milled, versus all-purpose, but hey, that's okay. So today the kids are going to help me in the kitchen, and I will give you some tips and tricks on how we're going to do all that stuff. I have definitely noticed that my kids are more eager to try something new made from scratch when they have helped make it. So today we are going to be making little pizzas. We're going to be doing some Parmesan bagel bread bites. And then we are also going to be using some of the leftover sauce to make a freeze-ahead lasagna with freshly milled flour noodles. And it's going to be amazing. So come along with us as we spend the day cooking in my kitchen. First, we are going to get our sauce going in the crock pot. I'm using home canned tomato juice. You could use store-bought, totally fine. I am using 4 quarts of homemade tomato juice, which is about 16 cups. So you could totally do this with store-bought sauce. That is totally okay. My husband really has to watch his sugar and his sodium, so I am finding that the only ways to watch both are for me to do things from scratch, because everything either has a ton of sodium in it or a ton of sugar. And I was stunned when I started reading labels how much sugar pasta sauce and marinara sauce and pizza sauce has in it. And doing it from home, you can sweeten it up a little bit with, honey or alternatives that, yes, it's still sugar, it's still carbs, but in my opinion, it's a little better. From my research, your body definitely processes it a little bit differently than processed white sugar does. So that's one reason we're going to do this. And then a tip that I learned from our Orly house, I love to watch her videos. She said that you could thicken your pasta sauces with carrots. And I was like, this lady's nuts. But no, it actually works. And it is a great way to hide some carrots and sneak them into your kids' diets. I know I don't like cooked carrots, and my kids don't like cooked carrots either. But this way, you seriously don't even know that they're in there. I just get a whole, for this, I just used a whole bag of the large carrots from Aldi's, peeled them. I didn't even cut them up. I just peel them and put them in there because I'm going to use an immersion blender later and blend it all up after everything is fully cooked. And you have no idea that they're in there. None whatsoever. The first couple times I did this, I didn't even tell my kids. And then the one time they saw me doing it, they were like, I don't like carrots. And I was like, you've been eating them like this for a long time and you just haven't even noticed. And then, they're fine. So then you're going to roughly cut up, 2 onions. Obviously, if you're halving this, you can half that. I did also add in about a cup of frozen roasted garlic cloves that I had in the freezer that my mom made and gave me. But I don't know if I edited that out on accident or what. But I dumped those in there after I had the sauce in there. They're in there too, just to simmering away. And we love onion. You could add more onion. You could add less onion. You could add onion powder. What I love about doing your own pasta sauce or marinara sauce, whatever you want to call it, pizza sauce, is that it's super customizable to do it this way. You don't need, like I said, I'm going to do this with the immersion blender, so you don't really need to super chop these up. And then when you get them chopped up, you're just going to add them to your crock pot, put the lid on, and turn it on. Now, I set mine to high because we were planning on having it for dinner, but if you are doing this before work or whatever, you can just set it to low and let it simmer all day. I am adding an Italian seasoning blend that I get from the little Amish community grocery store that I get my grains at. You can add whatever type of Italian spices you want. Oregano, thyme, parsley. Some of those are, some of the suggestions on recipes that I have seen. I just go for this Italian blend because I don't really know what I want in my sauce. You know what I mean? So I just do this, and it takes all of the guesswork out of it. And my favorite part to this is that, for one, you just set it and forget it. And two, it makes your house smell so fabulous. So while that's cooking, I already freshly milled my flour this morning. Now this is a mix of freshly milled and all-purpose. It's about 70-30. This recipe makes 2 Pullman loaf pans of bread. And I heard Sue Becker on a podcast when I was learning about freshly milled flour, and she said once you get a bread recipe that you like, you can use that for everything. Now, my kids will eat this bread recipe when I make bread with it, they will eat it as grilled cheeses. But like I said, we haven't found a sandwich bread recipe that anybody likes. I have a few kids that really like toast, and they'll eat this. So anyways, I use that recipe as the base. I'll type it out in the description box below. Again, it makes 2 Pullman loaf pans, and it's about 70% freshly milled flour, 30% all-purpose or bread flour, whatever you have. And it gives it a really nice texture. You still get a really nice rise, and my kids don't want brown bread because they've been used to the store-bought white bread, so this makes it a nice tan color that isn't too shell shock. It's not like, you're going from, white store-bought white sandwich bread to a dark rye bread that is super noticeable, and it isn't the same, eating it. Even I will agree with that. This is a difficult change to make as a family when you're going from eating store-bought things. It does take some time. So you just want to make sure that there are no dry chunks at the bottom. I really love this Dutch whisk, especially once I started making the freshly milled flour. I didn't love the Dutch whisk when I used only all-purpose, especially for sourdough. I felt like it was such a mess, but it does work really well for the freshly milled. And then I like to go at the bottom and just scrape it up. I'm not really trying to knead this because you do need to let it do an autolyse, I've heard both pronunciations. Because freshly milled flour does take longer to absorb the water. So after you get it in, and I'm not trying to knead this, I'm just making sure that there are no clumps of flour, because I have found that later on when I do start the kneading, and that sucks. So, you don't want that. You just want to make sure there's no clumps, there's no dry flour stuck to the bottom of your bowl, and then it's going to look like this. So definitely no gluten formed, nothing. And then my daughter's going to put a bowl cover over the top of it, and we are going to set it. Now, from things I've read, say that you need to get it covered and let it autolyse for at least 30 minutes. I have had better luck with 60 to 90 minutes. Sometimes I have forgotten it and it has autolysed for, a couple hours, and it is so much easier to knead it. It's easier on your arms. It's easier on your mixer, whatever you are using to do that. It's so much easier. So definitely don't skip the autolyse. One thing I have learned with baking and from scratch cooking is there's a lot of trial and error. One thing that I learned the hard way is there is a difference between active dry yeast and instant dry yeast. Active dry yeast is the one that I have here in this mason jar, and you have to activate it yourself in warm water or milk, some kind of liquid. You want to heat it up to about 110 degrees, but definitely no warmer than 120 because it will kill your yeast, and I have done that myself. So definitely don't do that. Something else to think about that I didn't realize until I started using freshly milled flour is that for the freshly milled flour, you kind of really want instant yeast because you do the autolyse process. So for this, this works for me still because I do use about 30% all-purpose flour. So I can still do this, and that's how I'm going to use up the rest of my active yeast, because you do have to let it sit in the water or milk, whatever liquid you're using, and I like to add a little bit of the all-purpose flour to that. and a little bit of honey. It helps it turn into a sponge quicker, and I have better luck. But I have also learned the hard way that you can use too much yeast. I have mistaken recipes where it said teaspoons of yeast, and I've put in tablespoons of yeast, and that makes your bread rise too fast. That gives you a hole in the middle, and it is just not fun. So I will warn you that baking is a lot of trial and error, and it's frustrating sometimes, but once you get the hang of it, it's like you have just mastered something amazing, and it is so nourishing to your family. If you're still thinking about switching to freshly milled flour, I encourage you to give it a try. Try milling the flour in your blender. I can't invest, $500-$700 in a mill. So I use a cheaper mill, and then I run it through my blender to get it, the thinner, better consistency, and that's okay. Try it. Go to an Amish store and get a small bag of grains and run it through your blender and see how you like it. And it is a process. Changing to whole grains is a process. But I mean, just being an honest adult here, it is a different taste. It is a different texture. So I am trying very hard to be patient with my family and be patient on yourself. It's okay. Last night we had air fried chicken nuggets and frozen canned store bought vegetables for dinner because one of my kids had a sporting event, had a basketball game. And so, life is about balance. It's not about being perfect. It's about getting the nutrients into your kids without as, so many preservatives and things like that. That is something that is important to me. Now, my yeast is activated here, so I'm going to go ahead and add that in to the rolls. And I am still adding a little bit of all-purpose flour to ours. So I do go ahead and add some of that to these two. There is a different texture with freshly milled flour than there is with all-purpose, and I have seen so many things where you can add vital wheat gluten and things like that to get the texture that I'm looking for, and I just find it a lot easier to just go ahead and add a cup or two of all-purpose flour. It's a lot cheaper, and I don't know, I haven't researched adding vital wheat gluten and things like that to it. I feel like those are the types of things that I'm trying to get away from. I don't know. I haven't researched that at all. I'm just adding the all-purpose flour. It's still mostly freshly milled flour, so I think that's totally fine. And then I'm going to put it in my KitchenAid mixer and let it knead because I am not a hand kneader. That is not so much fun. So here my bread has risen. It took about an hour. And I'm going to start to roll out my rolls. Now, there is a fast food pizza place near us that we really like, these garlic parmesan. I think they're called garlic parmesan bites. I'm not too sure. And I have been trying really hard to create our own. My husband really has to watch his sodium. And, I know that they put a lot of liquid butter, which is not good for you, on those when they're made at a pizza shop. So I've been trying to make them myself. And I have done where you weigh every roll and things like that. And today we were kind of in a hurry, and so I was just like, whatever, these kids are hungry. I was not weighing them. I just rolled them out. I have noticed that if you don't have a lot of surface tension, so if you don't roll these out on the counter and make them very nice, tight little rolled up balls, they go flat, especially with the freshly milled flour. So this time I tried doing them super tight and having them tucked in next to each other very tightly to hold their shape, and that seemed to work really well. So before I'm even putting these in the oven, I am brushing them with a whole stick of butter. This was I didn't even count this, but this is like a huge sheet pan that takes up a whole one of my oven racks. So there is a lot of rolls here. Even after we ate them for dinner, it filled 2-gallon sandwich baggies. So now I'm going to start rolling out the kids' pizza crusts. Sometimes I let them do this themselves, and sometimes I do this and then they just put the toppings on. This was New Year's Eve, and so the kids were just hungry and ready to start our little dance party. We made some little fun drinks, just sparkling waters, and that I got from the dollar store, and then we cut up like some little orange wedges and put that on there, and then we were gonna go have a dance party. So they were just ready to get their pizzas in the oven and have our little New Year's Eve party. So this is one of the best ways that I have found to get my kids to eat the freshly milled flour. Like I said, I still haven't found our sandwich bread yet. I think I'm close, but I still haven't found one. There is a recipe that I have that the kids will eat toast, but that's about it. So the rolls are right now. I just took them out of the oven, and that seems to be the key. I've tried putting the butter and spices. I have in here parsley, garlic powder, onion powder, and this is actually 2 sticks of butter because like I said, I've been playing with this recipe for a while now, and this seemed to be just as close as I think I'm going to get to the ones from the pizza place by us without actually using the liquid butter. These were delicious. They probably could have used a little bit more butter when we rewarmed the ones that were left over, but we ended up just dunking them in sauce or something because they did get a little dry after they had been in the refrigerator. But right now, freshly out of the oven, oh my gosh, they were so delicious. They definitely tasted just like the ones from the pizza place. They had enough garlic and Parmesan, and they were salty, but not too salty because I'm using salted butter. I don't even buy unsalted butter unless it's specifically for a recipe that I'm going to take somewhere. I will say I fought buying one of these little silicone brushes for a very long time. This one, I didn't buy this one. It came with some sourdough stuff that my mom got me, like accessories and like whatever. And this came with the cutest little yellow bowl scraper and spatula, and this has been a game changer for egg washes and brushing butter on things. I really like it. My daughter really likes a lot of garlic on these. She kept saying on our other batches that I had tried there wasn't enough garlic. So this one, I heavily seasoned these. Again, this is after they're done baking. So then I just let this sit here for a little bit, and then after they had cooled a little bit, I put the Parmesan on them. I didn't want that to melt and get super messy. My daughter wanted to be able to see it on these like you can on the ones from the pizza place. And I will say I will absolutely be making these again. With all the butter in them, I probably won't be making them very often. Like I said, this was our New Year's Eve special party feast. And so, it was okay to splurge on all the butter every now and then. But they are finally cooled off enough to try, and they were perfect. They are the perfect dinner roll texture. They were delicious. The kids all smashed on them. I myself had way too many of them. But they were very good. Another way that my kids really enjoy being in the kitchen with me is helping shred cheese. My mom got us this little cheese shredder that sits on the table, and this is like my younger two's favorite thing to do. And luckily for them, we always need lots and lots of cheese, so they can, shred the cheese until their little arm wants to fall off. But they really do seem to enjoy it, and this is one way that I have really gotten them more involved in being in the kitchen, and they're more eager to try things that they have made rather than things that I have made. So that has been very, very helpful. They just take turns. This is really neat. If you have little kids and you're, getting into shredding the cheese, I do help them push it down, and then they have that little thing so they don't get their fingers or anything like that. But yeah, you can use this. Used this to shred up zucchini for zucchini bread. We've done this with carrots for soups and things like that. And they're always very eager to help. I rarely do have to shred up anything anymore. They kind of do it for me, which is super nice. I will say the cleanup on this isn't my favorite, but they enjoy shredding it, and it makes my life easier. So our sauce was not done when we went to start making the cheese, so we just used some leftover spaghetti sauce that we had in the fridge from a couple nights previous to this when we had some pasta, which is fine because that needed used up anyways. The pasta sauce from Aldi's is what we used here, and we like their garlic, the roasted garlic basil, I think it is. I don't know. It's roasted garlic something. It has a purple label on it. It's our favorite. And they really enjoy putting all their sauces and toppings. Well, they don't actually put too many toppings on it. They just put the sauce and the cheese on theirs. That's just how they like it. There's their cheese. They worked super hard to shred. I have noticed we've tried pizza sauce and spaghetti sauce. The pizza sauce is definitely thicker than the spaghetti sauce, and that does seem to work really well, but the kids don't like it as well, so we just stick to what they like. You can stick to what you have on hand. I have done tomato paste before in a pinch when we needed something quick, and we were out of spaghetti sauce. I didn't have time to make pasta sauce or anything like that, so in a pinch you can even use tomato paste and just season it really well. We've done that before too, and it all works out, and the kids are happy and fed. So this is the next day. I just put the whole crock pot in the fridge after I did use the immersion blender, and I completely forgot to record that. So right in this one crock pot, I just used the immersion blender to get it all in there, and this is where you want to stop filling it. I put this one in the fridge. There's a line where you can stop to freezing it out. So now I'm going to make my noodles. I am using freshly milled flour with this. I'm not going to share the recipe that I used because I didn't love it. I think it could have used another egg or two, so I'm not going to share that yet. I'm still going to tweak, and I will share once I find one that I really, really like. This is only the second or third time that I've made noodles. There's a lot of arm work that goes into making noodles, and I was unaware. Apparently, my arms are not as in shape as I thought they were, and I was very sore the next day. So after you do get it all mixed up, you have to let it rest for at least 30 minutes. I let it rest until the next day. So we haven't eaten this recipe yet, but I just felt like my noodles came out kind of dry. So again, this is, the next day. And I'm just cutting them into more workable pieces. And I know there are KitchenAid attachments and things like that you can get. This is the one, this is actually my mom's, and her and I kind of pass it back and forth when we need to make noodles. The kids really like helping me make noodles when we have made them in the past, and they both come in and help me, and then they're like, whew, this is hard work. But I will say, in the past when I have made noodles, they do taste great. This is the first time that I have made noodles with freshly milled flour, with this type of freshly milled flour. I used hard white wheat. I have made them with einkorn before, and that recipe I felt like had too many eggs. So then I tried one with less eggs, and I guess I just need to find one in between. So if you have a favorite freshly milled flour noodle recipe, please link it below. If you have any tips for what I have done wrong here, please let me know. I'm new to this. I haven't researched making noodles more than, watching videos on YouTube. And not much direction. Like, I haven't looked up a freshly milled flour noodle recipe. You know what I mean? So it wasn't the easiest thing to work out, but it was fun. And I do end up freezing the lasagna that I make with these. And then I did freeze another bag of noodles. And like I said, we haven't tried them yet, but I'm sure they'll be edible. I think we're getting ready to actually eat one of them tonight while I'm doing this voiceover. We have some after school activities. But again, I find that when my kids have helped me make dinner, they're much more likely to help me eat it. Or to actually eat it, you know what I mean? Otherwise, they're proud when they have helped make it. So here, this is a couple days later. I let my noodles all dry on a cookie sheet or sheet pan, whatever you want to call it. I let them dry for a couple days. I kept them in the oven unless I was using the oven, so nothing got on them or anything. I moved them around here and there because I did have them kind of layered. My favorite thing to add to, so this is garlic and herb goat cheese. I get it from Aldi. I was trying to make the picture more clear and it just wasn't showing up. This is my favorite thing to add to lasagna. I found it a few years ago, and this was the first that this is the first thing I have ever cooked with goat cheese in, and it is a game changer for lasagna. I just got it, and I didn't tell my family that it was in there. I knew if the kids, and I didn't know if my husband will pretty much try anything. But I knew my kids would not try it. I was probably putting the goat cheese in their lasagna for, I'm not even kidding you, like a year or more before they ever found out. I took lasagna somewhere and they were raving about it being the best lasagna that they had ever had. And, it had such a different flavor and, it was creamy and yada, yada, yada. So they overheard me saying my secret ingredient was garlic and herb goat cheese from Aldi. Now the Aldi here that I get this from, these are under $2 a piece, I do believe. If they are over $2, it's very minimally over $2, but I feel like they're like $1.68 or $1. I don't know. I feel like they are under $2. I could be wrong. I'm just so used to having them in the fridge. I just grab a few every time we're there. We eat lasagna or baked spaghetti or something fairly often. And even if we just have spaghetti, I try to melt the goat cheese and like heat up the sauce and the goat cheese before I put it on the noodles. And it is heavenly. So for this batch of lasagna, I did not put any meat in mine. Not all of my kids like to have meat in their lasagna. If they do, I've noticed that they prefer ground sausage over hamburger, and I did not have any ground sausage, and I knew if I put hamburger in it or like ground chicken, I knew they wouldn't eat it. So I just left it alone, and like today I unthawed this because we're going to have it for dinner, and I have a pound of ground sausage that I'm just going to cook up and then top it for the kids who want meat and leave it off for the kids who don't. So basically we're just layering this. I have seen where you can make lasagna with fresh noodles, like not dried, but I got sidetracked and I didn't know exactly when I would be making this lasagna. So I just decided to let mine dry. And while I, tried to figure out what the heck I was. Now, I'm being very generous with the sauce since these are not boiled. These are not the no-bake noodles, obviously. They are just freshly milled flour noodles that I have let dry. But I have made lasagna with store-bought noodles that were not the ready-to-bake noodles many, many times. And I just used a lot of extra sauce. Like, I doubled the sauce and then still added, I put, filled up half of the jar with some water and poured it over. That way there was enough liquid to kind of cook the noodles, and you can totally do that in a pinch. You just keep layering and layering. You could also use, sometimes I put cottage cheese in the layers, but we were out of cottage cheese this day, or you could use ricotta cheese. You could even make your own ricotta cheese. I tried that once and it didn't turn out great. Like, it was still edible and it was great for lasagna, but it wouldn't be so great for like other things. I don't even know what other things you would use ricotta cheese for. I've only ever used it in lasagna, and that's what I used the one time I made it, and I thought it was an awful lot of work and it didn't even turn out quite right. So I haven't given that a whirl again. But you could do that. You could add onions and mushrooms and any toppings you want. This is just how my family likes it. And you just keep layering and layering and layering until you get to the top of your pan. So once you get to the top of your pan, I like to make sure that I put the mozzarella cheese on top of sauce and the goat cheese. And then you would have your meat in there if you were adding meat to this. And so this is about 2 blocks of mozzarella cheese that the kids shredded up for me. And then once I'm just going to use all of it. I love, love, love the mozzarella cheese on the top. I will say I have learned the hard way. Make sure that you bake it with aluminum foil on top. Otherwise, your cheese is burnt by the time your noodles are cooked. I've learned that one the hard way, and we were scraping the burnt cheese off the top to eat the lasagna, and it was not so much fun. So we're just kind of pushing it down because I may have overfilled this a little bit. This is just one of those flimsy aluminum pans from Aldi, so I could put it in the freezer because this time of year we have sports and things like that, and I work too. So it's nice to have things in the freezer that are homemade and healthy that I can just throw in the freezer in a pinch. Something I learned recently from another cooking video that I watched on, I think it was Facebook. Anyways, her suggestion was putting parchment paper over top of your cheesy dishes before you put the aluminum foil on, so that way your cheese doesn't burn to the aluminum foil. I have tried it one time other than this, and it works amazingly. Best tip ever. So I highly recommend you try it if you are going to be baking something with aluminum foil on it that's like touching the aluminum foil. I highly recommend putting the parchment paper on top. It was fabulous. I'm just making very sure that this is nice and sealed. I knew this wouldn't be in the freezer for crazy long. It actually was only in the freezer for 2 weeks before I used it. And then I am going to get a Sharpie and label the top of this so I don't forget what it is. And when like right now I have this exact pan thawing out, and I had to sit it on top of like a sheet pan because it is super flimsy, and I packed that sucker so full. So be careful when you pick it up. I almost dropped the whole thing here. It almost just like folds up into my hand and spills all over the floor. But I'm just writing what this is on top, the date that I made it, and what to bake it at, like the baking instructions, just in case for some reason my husband decided to bake it for us. Because he does do that sometimes if we're at my mom's or whatever. He will have food ready for us whenever we come home, like on the weekends or whatever, or if I have to take everybody. So, I don't know. He does that sometimes, and it's nice if I can have quick and easy things in the freezer. That way he can be super helpful and have a fabulous dinner ready for us in the freezer. And that is going to be all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this. As always, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. Bye!